What's cracking, guys? Hope you all are doing well. I've got a pretty rad project going on today out in the shop. Gonna get the RM250 engine build all buttoned up. We've just got the top end to bolt on the engine, and then toward the end of this video I've got a pretty sweet giveaway for you guys, so make sure you stay tuned for the entire thing. And with that, why don't we dig in? So this is where we left off in the previous video. We've got the bottom end all the way together. We've built this all the way from the ground up. Cases, transmission, crank, clutch, all that. And now we just have the top end left. So we've got the replated cylinder here, a Phathead cylinder head. That thing is really trick. Piston kit, all the exhaust valve parts, covers, all beautifully coated with Cerakote. And of course our wear items like gaskets, O-rings, all that. So let's get busy. First things first, I've got some new cylinder studs to install here. They just go right up here. So what the cylinder bolts to. And always a good idea to throw some anti-seize on those threads to prevent them from rusting in place. For the anti-seize, I'm using Permatex brand. Snagged it from Rocky Mountain. Now the rounded edge is going to be facing up on the studs. I'm going to put some anti-seize on the bottom side. And as far as where these studs go, they're all 4 different lengths. I just referred to the parts diagram on Rocky Mountain. Now to get these studs tightened down, we're gonna have to bust out a couple nuts. And we are gonna do what I call the double nut technique. So you put one nut upside down, another nut on top of it, and just tighten them against each other. And this makes it so much easier for tightening those studs down. Much better than using vice grips and tearing everything up. And these studs don't need to be super tight, maybe 20 or 30 foot-pounds. Break that 2 nuts loose and do the rest of them. Just to make sure I've got all those studs in the right places, I have the cylinder set on here. We'll get a little preview of how this thing looks. Oh yeah, looks like we're good. Man, that's gonna look freaking sweet when it's all bolted up. I say we almost send it with no piston. I bet that would work out real good. Now we've got a couple dowel pins. These go on the left side of the engine. You can see there's some recessed areas for them. Definitely want to throw some anti-seize on these as well. Now next up, we would be putting the piston onto the connecting rod. But before I do that, always good to double check measurements. So we've got this Pro X piston here. It is a B piston. I'm gonna check the piston to cylinder bore clearance as well as the ring end gap. Now usually when you buy a piston kit, you'll get an instruction sheet that shows the correct sizing. So the piston to cylinder wall clearance for this bike, a 250cc, is gonna be 0.06 to 0.07 millimeter. And so with this piston, Power Steel USA already went through, sized it up to the cylinder. They were the ones that went through, repaired and replated the cylinder. It was in really rough shape before. Got it all good to go, got it all sized up. But I'm gonna show you guys what it would look like if you were installing a new piston into an existing cylinder and what to look for with sizing. So a few other pointers here. It says a plated cylinder should always be honed or deglazed before installation. So you wanna have a good crosshatch inside the cylinder bore so you have a good seal. Obviously that one's ready to go. And then for the actual sizing, you should be measuring 90 degrees from the wrist pin and at 25% of the piston length from the bottom of the skirt. So let's go ahead and measure this thing up. All right, we've got the handy dandy feeler gauges. These are from Tusk. Gonna find our correct size here, right there. 0.06 millimeter, make sure it's clean. And then we're gonna check the sizing on the bottom side. So we're gonna measure 90 degrees from the wrist pin, so right here or on this side, and then 25% up from the piston length, or 25% of the piston length from the bottom of the skirt. So we're gonna check about, quarter of the way up. So we're gonna line up the feeler gauge on the skirt, kind of feed them into the bore together. Then we're going to check the tension on the gauge. So you want to move in and out with a little bit of effort. You want some drag there. You don't want it to be super loose or tight to the point where it doesn't move. I would say that's pretty much spot on with the recommended spec. Power Seal killed it with that. Now we can go ahead and check the piston ring end gap. Now for the ring end gap, we're gonna be popping the rings into the cylinder bore with the help of the piston. And as far as the clearance goes, it says here the ring end gap should be around 0.4 to 0.5% of the piston diameter. So the piston diameter on this one is 66.35 millimeter. I'll bust out the calculator here. So we ended up with 0.33 millimeter. Let's go ahead and find that on these feeler gauges right there. Go ahead and get the first ring started in the cylinder. Push it down there about, I don't know, ½ inch. Take the piston, and we're gonna use this to center up the ring. Make sure we get that thing perfectly level. Gonna push up on it a little bit, and then take your feeler gauge and fish it in between the gap on the end of the rings. Once again, you want a little bit of drag here. Ooh, that's feeling good. Then we can pop this ring out and do the other one. This one's not really going in. Go ahead and size down and see what the actual spec is. So 0.28 fits in there. And let's see if that's within the 0.4 to 0.5% range. So it gives us a range of 0.26 to 0.33. So it looks like 2.8 still good. Nice. Now what you can do if your ring end gap is too tight, you can file away the end of the gap here, or end of the ring. You want to just go obviously little increments at a time. And if your end gap is too big, you might just have to size up on your piston. Now definitely take your time sizing up your piston and rings to your cylinder. It's important to have a good seal. This is one of the most essential things when building an engine. If you have too loose of a clearance, like too small of a piston, you're not gonna get a good seal there, and your compression is gonna be low. The bike is not gonna have as much power as it should. It might not even run. And conversely, if your piston is too big and your clearance is too tight, you're gonna scrape the heck out of your cylinder here, ruin your piston in a hurry. And so whether you have a 4-stroke or a 2-stroke, definitely take your time with this. This is very important. Now for putting the rings on the piston, we're gonna refer to the instructions once again. It shows the difference between the top ring and the second ring. This is a 2-ring piston. And then also shows which way the rings should be facing up. You guys might be able to see this on camera, but the top ring is supposed to have a more rounded edge. Feels a little bit more smooth, while the second ring has more of a square edge to it. Very important to have them in the correct orientation. And you can also bust out a magnifying glass and you'll be able to see the difference too. And then if you have rings with markings, which for some reason these ones don't, those markings you want facing up. Actually, if you perfectly line up the two rings here, you'll be able to see which one is which. You can see there's a little bevel in between the top and bottom ring. So we're gonna start with the bottom ring first. Just try to work it over the piston. All right, now for the top one, and it looked like both of these rings were the same from top to bottom. So there was no correct up or down. Maybe that's the reason for the no markings, but yeah, there we go. Before the piston goes on the bike, always handy to get one of the stir clips in. So I'll start with one edge into, whoa! And that thing came flying out of there. Caught me by surprise. Reminded me of last night. So what I was saying here is I'll get one edge lined up in the groove. And it's nice, this piston has a little bevel or angle to allow you to get that thing popped in. And you'll hear a little clip. There we go. As for the position of the end gap on the circlip, you could either go 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock. Just because we're closer here, I'm gonna go to 6 o'clock. All right, looks good. Make sure you don't have any sharp edges or burrs here. All right, we're ready to slap this thing on the rod. Now, before I drop the piston onto the rod, gotta make sure everything's lubed up like usual. So I've just got some regular engine oil in here, gear oil. You could also use premix Caster 927 is what I'm using, just to lube up the wrist pin bearing. Give that thing a nice coat of oil. Maybe even throw some in here as well. Now we're ready for the piston, and on basically any engine, 2-stroke or 4-stroke, the arrow is gonna face toward the exhaust side of the bike. It's gonna go on just like this. Also make sure that wrist pin has a nice coat of oil on it. And then you can just basically just slide her on through. Sometimes it takes a little wiggling and finessing to get that pin through the wrist pin bearing. Seat that thing all the way. And now we're ready for the other circlip. Always good to stuff a rag in there in case you drop that circlip. Man, having that little edge makes all the difference. You can just pop these things in by hand. Props to Pro X for putting those in there. Gonna rotate this clip to 6 o'clock. Alrighty. Piston is on. Looks like we're ready for the gasket. Should be this one right here. Now, if you guys are curious where I'm getting all these parts from, the majority of them are from Rocky Mountain. The gasket, studs, piston kit, pretty much everything is from Rocky Mountain with the exception of the head. And I'll actually drop links to everything I'm using throughout this video down below. So it looks like we're ready for the cylinder, but before I slap this thing on, I'll need to bolt on the exhaust valve parts. That's everything over here. You'll notice some of these pieces are coated. So the black parts are done in a micro slick Cerakote. That's like an anti-stick coating, helps prevent carbon buildup, reduces friction, and also helps keep away the heat. And then the covers are done in a cobalt colored 8 series Cerakote. And then to help everything go together, print out this diagram from Rocky Mountain. That should be a big help. Looks like the first thing we'll need to assemble here is the actual valve into this plate. It should just slip in like so. Line up the arms with the valve, and then it should just slide right into the cylinder. Oh, we forgot our lube. Always a bad day when you forget the lube. This thing should just pop right in. There we go. We've got a couple Allen head screws that hold this plate assembly in. Throw some blue Loctite on them to keep them into place. Now we've got to figure out where these two arms and the shaft go. Start with this one. Looks like it goes right there. Locks in between these two arms. Have to pull those out to get it in place. Goes in like that. And then this one goes onto the actual shaft. Pops into those grooves. Then we've got the shaft that goes through the whole thing. And in looking at the diagram, it goes from the clutch side to the flywheel side. Pop that thing on through. Actually, got a little spring that goes here. There's a little hole it pops into right here. There's a little hole on this shaft that the spring goes into. So you know what, it's gonna be easier to get that hole in first. There we go, that's much simpler. Pop it into here, and then go ahead and slide that shaft on through. Like butter. Man, it's nice having everything all clean and fresh. I hate rebuilding stuff that's all dirty. Just line up this hole with the shaft. Got a little Allen head screw that goes in there. Let's go ahead and test, make sure this thing's working right. Yep. Now with the valve assembled and working, you can see the function of the valve. So when it opens up, that increases the size of the exhaust port, increases the amount of air coming out, helps with power at high RPM, and then when you close it, that decreases the size, creates some back pressure, and helps out with throttle response at low RPM. So yeah, these things are very helpful on a 2-stroke. And just playing with this thing by hand, feels like that micro slick made a good difference in the amount of friction. Everything works really smoothly and looks a lot cleaner. So, got a thumbs up in my book so far. Now I should mention there is a certain direction the spring should go on. So the side with the bend tighter to the coils goes on this side, but once you mess with it, you'll see the proper direction, but just something to be aware of there. Now we're gonna need to assemble this side of the cylinder, or this side of the valve. So we've got all these pieces here. I took it all apart to clean it up, kind of shine it up. So we're gonna start with the spring and the inner plate. These parts, you can refer to the diagram, see how they go together, or just look at the wear marks here, how things line up. So we're gonna bring this side of it over to the other end of the plate, all the way around, like so. Now you're gonna wanna keep a good hold on it. This thing could be flying off into outer space if you let it go. Get the spacer in between here, just to lock everything together. Oh shoot, see what I'm saying there? You gotta get a good strong grip on it. All right, we got it back together. So we're gonna set this up on the end of the shaft here. Fuck. Now you guys might be able to see this. There's a little slot here on the end of the shaft. We're gonna line up the inner plate with that slot. There we go. And then we've got this plate that goes on the outside. Let's pop this thing in. Then we just got the retaining plate that goes on the outside and keeps everything in place. Now for some reason this plate is really sloppy on the shaft. It's like there's a gap between the washer and the plate. I'm gonna have to dig into this. So it looks like the plate sits lower than the actual shaft. So I think what I'm gonna do here is find a washer that fits around the shaft to try to push that plate down. Let's see if this washer will do. Oh yeah, that should work. Oh yeah, she's nice and tight now. No more sloppy secondhand parts. Now while we're on this side, we're gonna install the secondary valve. I believe that's what it's called. You wanna make sure you have the right valve. Goes on the right side of the cylinder. You can see it's marked right there. And this hole is gonna need to line up with the pin down inside of there. Get her all lubed up. And drop her in until that pin goes in. There we go. Then we've got a little spacer here, a little collar that goes over the end of the shaft. And to cap it off, got the cover here. Come to think of it, you can't even see this cover when it's all together. Oh well, at least it'll look cool when you tear it apart. Actually, I'm gonna need to put the O-ring on there. And then just drop this guy right in place. Oof. Now that's it for the right side. The left side is basically the same. Also, not a bad idea to work some oil into these roller bearings here. Before I cap this side, I thought I'd show you guys how this exhaust valve system works. It's kind of like a two-step or two-stage system. So you have the main valve right here that works in the exhaust port here. So when you move the shaft, you can see that valve inside working, kind of open up the port. And then when you move the shaft all the way, that opens up the side or the secondary valves. You can see the side valves don't open until you fully turn the shaft. So halfway opens the main valve and all the way opens the side valves. So pretty cool system. Now to verify those secondary valves are installed correctly and they're working right, just open up the shaft. You can look inside the exhaust port and see that they're opening fully. Now we've got a few more things to install on this side of the cylinder, and that would be the adjuster for the power valve. And believe it or not, you can actually control the power of the engine or change the power of the engine with these parts here. They basically hold tension on the exhaust valve itself and gives you control over when that valve opens. So first up, we've got this little collar. We're gonna line it up with a spring here, and then goes into this hole right here. And in the end of the shaft, there's gonna be another slot, and you wanna make sure all that lines up. You wanna twist it around until it lines up right there. And then on goes the cap. The slot you wanna line up with the spring once again. So I'll give you guys a little demonstration of how that tensioner works. So right now we have no tension on the valve, and you can notice here the valve, the center valve here, it kind of binds up. It doesn't want to retract all the way on its own, and that's why you need the tensioner. And also that gives you the ability to kind of change the power curve on the bike too, when you're able to control the tension on this valve here. So you can see it doesn't want to return. Let's add a little tension to it. We'll do that by turning this adjuster clockwise. We're gonna go a quarter turn. See how fast that retracts now? Now, basically how this adjuster changes the power curve of the bike is the more tension you put on the spring, the more you turn it clockwise, the longer the power valve is gonna stay open. So that's gonna increase the pull on the low end, and the hit will be later on. You know, when a two-stroke has that hit, that'll be later on in the power band. And then when you have less tension, that is gonna open the power valve sooner. So it's gonna have less low end pull, and then that hit will come sooner on. So if you do a lot of track riding, you may wanna have less tension on the spring, maybe only a quarter turn out like we have right here. And then if you do primarily trail riding, maybe go like a half a turn clockwise. Now you can go ahead and mess around with the tension on this thing. You can go a quarter turn out, half turn out, 3/4 turn out. I probably wouldn't go much more than 3/4, but you do want some tension on the spring there, so that way the power valve doesn't get sticky. Now that power valve adjustment isn't gonna make a huge difference, but definitely something you can play with, dial in to your liking. I think it'd be pretty fun too. Now, I know you guys are curious how I got this cylinder looking new again. Actually, it looks better than new. Well, first off, the bore was all jacked up. It had a bunch of pitting damage from detonation, all scraped up. And so I sent it out to Power Seal USA. They went through, TIG welded that damage. I'll pop a few pictures on the screen to show what it looked like before. So they TIG welded it, smoothed it out, replated the bore to fix all those scrapes and scratches. Got it all ready to rip again, looking good. And then for the exterior, look how shiny that is. I had that vapor blasted or vapor honed by my buddy Josh Traxler. Did an amazing job. This thing is gonna look freaking sweet up here on the engine. Now, if you guys are in need of any cylinder repair work or vapor blasting, I will have both Power Seal USA and Josh linked down below. Go hit them up. Now, a quick little checklist before the cylinder goes on. We'll need to make sure the piston is facing the right way. Arrow should be pointing toward the exhaust. Obviously, get your gasket on, get your dowel pins in there. And then for the rings on a two-stroke, there's a little pin, locating pin, where the end of the ring, where the ring end gap should sit. You can see that pin right there. And then the last thing to check for are the end gaps on the circlips. You either want those at 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock. Now, as far as lubrication for the piston and cylinder for assembly, you can definitely overdo it. So you want to be pretty conservative here. Just a light coat on the rings, light coat on the skirts on either side, and then just do a little bit here in the bore on the bottom side. That's all it takes. Don't go overboard with it. And then as far as oil, just use the premix that you're going to be running in the bike. So if all that checks out, you are ready for the cylinder. Now, the reason why you don't want to go crazy with oil is that'll actually prevent the rings from seating all the way. Now, with too much oil in there, you'll actually have not enough friction and not enough heat to seat those rings in the cylinder. And so it takes, friction and heat in order to kind of bond the rings to the cylinder. Now, there's a few different approaches. Some people don't use any oil at all. Some people will use things like WD-40 for break-in. There's many different approaches. However, this is the way I've always gone about it, and it's always worked out well for me. I'm gonna make sure those ring end gaps are lined up with the pins, and we can grab that cylinder and get after it. First thing we'll need to line up is the power valve shaft. And pinch that first ring. Try to go on as straight as you can. You just don't want to catch a ring in a port. Nice and slow does the job. And just wiggle her on. And once you get down to those dowel pins, you'll have to kind of shimmy it around a little bit more. A little tap with a rubber mallet ain't gonna hurt anyone. All right, looks like she's seated all the way. Oh shoot, guys. I forgot the piston. Gotcha. That would be bad. Then you're gonna wanna locate your nuts for holding the cylinder on. You wanna snug up these nuts evenly. Just go kind of in a crisscross pattern here. The torque spec is 27 foot-pounds, but since we need a wrench to get in ones like this, we won't really be able to torque it. I'll just have to use the torque wrench in my arm for these ones. Now, if any of you guys want a really good idea for an invention, invent a torque wrench that you can just slap in your arm, just cut her open and pop her in, and you can be like, beep, that's 30 foot-pounds right there. You'll just have to give me half the proceeds though. Can't forget about this shaft that comes up from the bottom end. Just pop it in, bring this little plastic retainer around, snap that into place like that. Then just make sure it's working smoothly. Oh yeah, she's nice and tight. Now at this point, we're ready for the cylinder head. And what we've got over here, showed you guys earlier, this is a Phathead Racing billet aluminum cylinder head. If you guys don't already know, these things are the absolute shit. Not only do they look really trick, they are a super slick design as well. You can pop out the dome, swap them out for a different compression ratio, build some more power. We're going to be running the stock dome for now. And then inside this box, we've got a different size dome for some more compression, some more ponies. You also get the O-rings, the acorn nuts, the washers, some cool stickers. Oh, I'm already beating this thing up. You get the engine mount stays, as well as that other dome we talked about. This one bumps up the compression a bit. Get some more wheelies out of your bike. Yeah, so these things are like the coolest thing ever for two-strokes. And to top it all off, Lucas at Phathead offers some custom engraving. He did Team Prime with the Prime logo. Whoever wins this bike is going to be pretty stoked on that. Yeah, I'm tired of talking. Let's get it bolted up. Actually, you know what? I don't have any studs. I'm going to have to go find them. Now, before the head and the O-rings go on, I'm going to make sure the sealing surface is nice and clean. Got some contact cleaner here. Then we can pop in these O-rings that were supplied with the Phathead cylinder head. Looks like this one goes on the outside. Ooh, that one fits perfect. And then the orange one is for the center. Make sure we got the O-ring on the dome. Yep. Now, one thing you can do with the O-rings, if they're not wanting to stay in place, just put a dab of grease on them. That'll help them out. Let's go ahead and see how this head lines up. Oh man, look at that. That's pretty freaking sweet. Man, Lucas really gives you the full works here. It even gives you the grease in case you need it on the O-rings. Extra O-rings for the head, some stickers. Let's go ahead and pull out these nuts and washers. It's pretty sweet. These are just like the factory acorn nuts for the head. We just got the copper washers that go underneath. Torque this baby down and we'll be in business. Now the head nuts call for 18 foot-pounds, and obviously you want to tighten these evenly and kind of incrementally as well. So we're going to start at 10, jump up to 15, and then to 18. Well, ladies and gents, we got ourselves a fine looking two-stroke engine. I'll probably just be staring at this thing for the next week. I think all we got left is the power valve covers and a spark plug. We're done. I also picked up some new fittings for the vents for the power valve. They go here and one on the other side. I believe that is it. couldn't be more excited with the result. This thing turned out absolutely beautiful with the brushed aluminum, touches of blue, some cobalt Cerakote, all sorts of cool stuff going on, but still really clean. Now I did have a little issue on this side of the engine. I actually had the right side crank seal in backwards. So when I was putting it in, I was referring to the before pictures I took, which the person before had it in backwards as well. Really easy to do. When you put it in the wrong way, it actually looked correct. And when you flipped it around, you're like, that must be backwards. So, but anyways, I referred to the service manual, ended up flipping around. It's all good now. But lesson here is don't trust the work of what other people did before you. Always refer to the service manual when you come across things like that, you know, the orientation of a seal. That's very important. If I would have left it like that, that probably wouldn't have been good. Now I got something special for you guys. Over here, I've got another box with a Phathead logo on it. Got 2 of them, so you know what that means. Let's dig in and see what we got here. Must be some more head. All right, look at this beauty. We got 2 of them. So this is an extra head from Lucas, and we are gonna be doing a giveaway with it. Unfortunately, the etching got a little off the head here. Not a huge deal, purely cosmetic, but this is the same exact head that we just bolted on, and I am giving it away completely free. You got the head, the dome, an extra dome, everything needed to get yourselves a sweet head on your RM250. Now this particular head fits RM250s for 2001 and 2002. Now Lucas does have heads for other models, tons of other 2-strokes, you name it, he's got it. I have one on my CR250 as well. Let's go take a peek at that. Now this is the newer style head for the CR250. He did some custom engraving on it as well. Looks really trick on there. So yeah, you guys should have a pretty good idea of how rad these heads are. Now to go snag a head for your 2-stroke, head over to phatheadracing.com. I'll put the link down below as well. And if you want to save 10% on a head, that's some solid change right there. Use the code CAM10. So CAM10 saves you 10% on a head. Go hit up my dude Lucas. Always coming out with new stuff for the 2-strokes, supporting the 2-stroke gang. And he's a super rad dude as well. Now as far as how to win the giveaway cylinder head, I will have the link to the giveaway page down below in the description. So you have until Friday, April 24th to get your entry in to win this head. Now it fits RM250s 2001 to 2002. So if you don't have that bike, please don't enter. So I'll be announcing the winner in a live stream on the 25th or 26th. I'll keep you guys posted. Now to cap off this video, I'm gonna go grab some cool cinematic shots of this beast. Well guys, that is it for the RM250 engine build. Couldn't be more excited with how this thing turned out. Just hopefully she runs as good as she looks. I don't think we should have a problem with that. It's pretty fresh from top to bottom. But I just want to say thank you to you guys for tagging along throughout these videos. I had a ton of fun bringing you guys through the process of building this thing up. And I always learn a lot too. It's a good refresher for me. And I hope it's helpful for you guys too. One other thing. This bike that I'm building, the 2002 RM250, when it's all finished up, I'll be giving it away completely free to one of you guys. Just a way of showing appreciation for you all that watch the channel, just a way of giving back. So to enter to win this bike, just go down below in the description, click that first link. So that wraps up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I got a lot of great content coming your way with this bike. So make sure you stay tuned, and I will see you on the flip side. Keep it prime.